everyone. This video is about unit number 1 in the Gateway 2 to English for the second baccalaureate students to help them get ready for their baccalaureate exams. And good luck to everybody. So we're gonna start with this first video about unit number 1. And as you know, unit number 1 was about education, and you have seen 3 kinds of education: formal, informal, and non-formal education. So let's get started with the first kind of education very quickly, just to get to know what formal education is. Now, formal education refers to learning through a program of instruction in an educational institution, adult training center, or in the workplace. This type of education is usually generally recognized in a qualification or a certificate. Maybe a picture would help you to get it better, to understand more, and maybe the keywords can help you as well. There is a program in this kind of education. It's usually in an educational institution, and you are qualified once you finish your learning process, and usually with a certificate. Now, the second kind of learning is non-formal education. Non-formal education refers to learning that results from a program, but it's not usually evaluated. That means no exams needed, and it does not lead to any certificate once you are finished. And maybe the example of illiteracy classes can be a great one, so that to know this kind of education, you study in a classroom, you have books, you have a program that you follow, there is a teacher who help you to learn, or help old people to learn, but those old people, they will never get a certificate, they will never graduate, they will never get a job because of those lessons. Maybe just to learn how to read and write. That's the main objective. Now, the third kind is kind of between formal and non-formal education, and that's the things we learn in our everyday life activities. It's learning that results from activities related to daily life experiences. It can be at work, or in family, or leisure. Things that we do just for fun. And think about when you were a kid and you are just playing games and having experiences in your everyday life, but still you learn from those things. Now, move on to the first lesson of unit number 1, and it's vocabulary, and we're gonna start with collocations. What is a collocation? When 2 words are used together regularly, mostly all the time, and they make a sense, they have a meaning, it is called a collocation. Collocations always appear in the same order. Putting them the other way around seems wrong. So that means that collocations follow a certain order. We cannot put them the other way around. We will see examples and explain that. First example: with free access to internet, more people will benefit from the advantages of the World Wide Web. And the collocation here is free access. We never can say access free, because we have to respect the order that the words make a meaning, or an order in which the words make a sense. Another example is Amazigh people have a huge cultural background that passes from one generation to another. The collocation is cultural background, and the same like what we said before, we never say background cultural, because that will be incorrect. Now, we move to communication. In communication, the lesson was about making and responding to requests. But let's start by understanding what is a request. Usually when we want someone to do something for us, we don't give an order, but we rather use a request. So to make a request is to ask for something in a polite way. For this reason, there are so many expressions that can be used to make the request more appropriate and more acceptable. Check these examples. Can you help me, please? The expression for making a request is can you, please. As we said before, a request is usually polite. Could you say it again more slowly? Would you pass me the salt, please? Would you mind waiting a moment? And you may see the difference between using the expression would you and would you mind. Would you is always followed with a verb in infinitive form without to. Would you pass? Would you mind, on the other hand, is followed with a verb in a gerund form. And later in the lesson of grammar we will see what a gerund is. But because you are just revising, let's say that a gerund is a verb plus ing. Would you mind waiting a moment, not wait? The last example is, can I see you in my office, Bob? And maybe the last one this time is, please, would you open your suitcase, madam? Would you is an expression for making a request. Now, usually when somebody make a request, we respond, we answer to that. It can be either accept the request to do what we were asked to do, or simply decline and refuse. Now, responding to a request. People respond to a request in many different ways. Here are some examples. Yes, sir. Yes, of course. Sure. That will be fine. And of course we are here accepting the request. I will see what I can do. We're not accepting, we're not refusing, or maybe politely refusing it. I am afraid I can't. Refusing the request. And you may have noticed that we use please when we use a request or when we make a request, and please is often used with requests or instructions to make them more polite. Please comes at the beginning or end of a sentence. The lesson of grammar in unit number 1 was about gerund or infinitive. We start by getting to know what a gerund is. Simply, gerund form is a verb plus ing. Any verb plus ing is gerund, and don't mix it with the present continuous or past continuous, where we have a verb plus ing, but we always have the verb to be before it. So a gerund is only verb plus ing. Example: speaking, listening, watching, going, doing. And we have the infinitive form, that is the to plus a verb. Example: to speak, to listen, to read, to do, and to go. Now, what is the difference between gerund and infinitive? Like in English, sometimes we must use gerund form after certain verbs, and on the other hand, we must use infinitive after another group of verbs as well. Let's see the table below, because it contains some of the verbs that are usually followed by one of the forms gerund or infinitive. Verbs that are normally followed by gerund. Examples: acknowledge, admit, adore, avoid, discuss, dislike, enjoy, finish, involve, quit, which means stop, mind, suggest, understand. Other verbs are followed by infinitive, like afford, agree, ask, choose, expect, learn, manage, plan, promise, refuse, want. So let's move on and see some examples together. Example of verbs followed by gerund. I adore reading English fiction books. The gerund verb or the gerund form is reading, and we use it in gerund form simply because we have the verb adore before it. My father quit smoking long ago. Smoking is in gerund form because we have the verb quit. He suggested visiting the historical monuments of the city. First, visiting is in gerund because we have the verb suggest. And remember that because you might need it, or we will see it in the lesson of reported speech in another unit. Now, let's move on to verb plus infinitive. Some examples. I can't afford to buy, not buying, but to buy because we have the verb afford. My teacher agreed to postpone the final exam till next week. We should learn to express ourselves. The infinitive is to express because we have the verb learn before. The last example, the students managed to solve the problem. Now, gerund and infinitive, both. Some verbs, however, can be followed by both. That means infinitive and or gerund. Whether we use infinitive or gerund after those verbs, both are correct. The meaning doesn't change at all. An example, he began to learn, or he began learning English when he was 14 years old. Both sentences are correct. Whether we use gerund or infinitive, it doesn't really matter. I hate to leave early. I hate leaving early. Now we are done with verbs. Let's move on to when do we use gerund as well. Gerund can be used after prepositions and expressions. The gerund must be used when a verb comes after a preposition, as well as some expressions such as against, at, after, by, on, tired of, without, keen on, would you mind, in spite of, because of, due to. And let's check some examples, and we start with the first one. I am against smoking. You notice that the gerund is smoking, and why we use it in gerund form? Because we have against before. I went home after leaving the party. We use leaving because we have after before it. That girl is good at speaking languages. Speaking is a gerund form verb because we have at as a preposition before. I am tired of hearing excuses every time. You can't go to France without having a visa. We simply cannot use infinitive after the expressions in green color. Against, after, at, tired of, without. The last lesson of unit number 1 was writing, and it was about cohesive devices. That means linking words. What are linking words? Let's check this short definition. Some words and phrases help to develop ideas and relate them to one another, to relate ideas to each other. These kind of words and phrases are often called linking words. They help to give a kind of coherence and logical relationship to what we write. Linking words are of different kinds. Why they are of different kinds? Because when we write different ideas that have different relationship. That relationship decide what kind of linking word we use. Let's start with the first set of linking words. On the other hand, while, whereas, however, nonetheless, nevertheless. These expressions relate to ideas which contrast but do not contradict each other. That means we always have two ideas that are different, that are contrasted, kind of opposite to each other, but they don't contradict. جوج الازيد اللي هما العكس، وحدة العكس ديال الأخرى، ولكن ما تتناقضش مع بعضياتهم. Example: football. You all know football. Football is popular in England, in Morocco as well. Whereas in Australia they prefer cricket. So we have two ideas that are different, that are contrasted, but they are not contradictory because both of them make sense. Jack thinks we are ready to begin, whereas Tom thinks we still need to wait. Two contrasted ideas. Smoking is proved to be dangerous to the health. Nonetheless, 40% of the population smokes. The last example in this set of linking words is: our teacher promised to take us on a field trip. However, he changed his mind last week. And a lot of teachers do that, by the way. Just kidding. Now, move on to the next set. We got moreover, furthermore, in addition, both, and, to, as well, also. And we use these expressions to add, plus. Add in mathematics is plus. To add information to what has been said, simply because we want to add an idea to another idea that might be similar or talking about the same thing. Examples: his problems with his parents are extremely frustrating. Moreover, there seems to be no easy solution to them. So not only he has problems with his parents that are frustrating, but also he cannot even solve those problems. Another example is: our energy bills have been increasing steadily. In addition to these costs, our telephone costs have doubled over the past 6 months. So two ideas that are adding more information to what has been said before. The next set of linking words is therefore, as a result, consequently, because, due to, since. And these expressions show the cause-effect or effect-cause relationship between two sentences, two ideas, where one is the cause and the other is an effect. Check out these examples. He reduced the amount of time studying for his final exams. As a result, his marks were rather low. Why his marks were low? Simply because he reduced the amount of time studying for his final exams. We have lost over 3,000 customers over the past 6 months. Consequently, we have been forced to cut back our advertising budget. One idea is a cause and one idea is an effect or a consequence. A number of programs have been cancelled because, due to, the government has drastically reduced its. Thank you very much. This is just Unit 2.